I want to present to you the Fairness Protocol and how implementing it into your point of view of cryptocurrency, blockchain, and everything related can result in a much more precise analysis of said topics and projects related to them. Note that the following course is not meant to be taken as trading advice and is only intended to make you a better consultant and a better analyst. The following protocol also gives you the kind of insight where you might notice bits and pieces and details way ahead of the majority of the people out there. Don't expect what is commonly said in the media and the market these days. Those books and what's preached out there are tailored completely towards selling and profit. And many of the topics discussed will be both fresh and from a new perspective and non profitable, but extremely useful. With that said, and without further ado, we will now begin the introduction of the fundamentals of cryptocurrency. You might have heard of many of the following phrases used in your daily conversations and never know their meaning and or application, such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, blockchain, and smart contracts. To understand all of the following and ultimately the Fairness Protocol, we must first understand the meaning of value and cost. Although those terms get thrown around like they are synonyms, but they are actually very different. You see, many people think news equals fundamentals, but you should know that they're quite different. While things like news and techniques are made, what people really can't influence is the fundamental value of something. When do we realize an object's value? When we gain a good understanding of the object and its components and its current usage. Only then we can actually start determining the value it holds. For example, let's take a look at a simple object like a carpet. What carpet traders can influence are the news about the carpets, their dealings and contracts, and their trades, which ultimately round up to make the carpet's price. But its core value resides in different things, such as what it's made of, its components, how much time it took to make it, and even things such as the amount of food consumed by the laborers who made the carpet. So you see, all these make up the carpet's value. So, in conclusion, real value does not equal pricing, and understanding that value makes a good investment. Again, I should remind you that the information you're about to learn is not targeted at making you a good investor, but rather to make you a better and more precise analyst and consultant in the subject. With that being said, profitable investment comes from knowing something's base value. Is it being traded under its value and should I buy it, or is it being traded higher than its actual value and should I sell it? All these questions get answered when you realize that base value. In short, by knowing the fundamentals and constructive value of something, you can realize its structural fundamentals, which in return gives you the ability to estimate its property value. The same thing really goes for cryptocurrency. Knowing a token's or project's constructive value and fundamentals result in you knowing that token's actual worth. And here's where we reach our one of the most prominent tokens out there, Bitcoin. Bitcoin was one of the first crypto projects to make a hit and skyrocket. And even now, after all these years, many people who claim to know and trade it still do not really understand what Bitcoin actually is, and thus do not realize its value. Why? Because when you listen to them and what they say, you see them separating blockchain and cryptocurrencies or talking about the myths surrounding these subjects. If anyone separates these two topics, you should probably know that they don't really understand anything about this field. Secondly, many people who enter this field and study it don't really still understand the meaning of decentralization or how it works, and they spread complete misinformation about topics such as the 51% attack and others. The thing is, if you understand Bitcoin, the purpose of its creation, and how it works, only then can we venture beyond it and talk about more advanced topics such as smart contracts and even analyze different projects. But again, you shouldn't be afraid of making mistakes. I have a quote that I hold onto very much, and that is making mistakes is the only way toward real growth. Even I make many mistakes each and every day, but the important part is that we don't repeat those same mistakes over and over again. Bitcoin is a digital currency that operates on a decentralized peer to peer or P2P network meaning it is not controlled by any government or single financial institution and is not affected by any political affairs. It was created in 2009 by an unknown person or group of people using the pseudonymous name Satoshi Nakamoto. In Bitcoin, transactions are recorded on a public ledger called the blockchain, which is maintained by a network of computers. It's noteworthy that blockchain and crypto are intertwined and go hand in hand. The blockchain ensures that each Bitcoin transaction is secure and tamper proof, as it requires the approval and confirmation of multiple nodes or participants before it is added to the chain. This makes the Bitcoin network highly secure and resistant to fraud, as hackers would need to compromise a significant portion of the network to successfully manipulate the blockchain. Bitcoin has gained popularity over the years due to its security, accessibility, and potential for significant gains through its speculative nature. However, it also faces criticism for its lack of regulation and several bugs that might affect this process. One such criticism is the lack of smart contracts within it. What is a smart contract and what are its usages and topics? We will get to that later. But as of now, even with all the criticism and known problems, Bitcoin is the most decentralized token in the whole wide universe. And the wide range of nodes and users make it so. And that's where cryptocurrencies came into light. Cryptocurrencies are digital currencies that use encryption techniques to regulate their generation of units and verify the transfer of funds. Unlike traditional currencies like the gold backed currencies of the past, cryptocurrencies are decentralized and are not regulated by central authority. One of the key differences between cryptocurrencies and gold backed currencies is their lack of physical backing. Cryptocurrencies do not have physical backing and are instead created through mathematical algorithms and equations. This means that while gold backed currencies had a finite supply, the supply of cryptocurrencies is unlimited and can be created through mining processes as well as other means. Another difference is the way in which cryptocurrencies are traded. Unlike gold backed currencies, which were tied to physical reverses, cryptocurrencies are traded on public exchanges and their value are determined by the market demand and supply. This can create much more volatility in the currency's value, as seen by how the value of Bitcoin and other popular cryptocurrencies have fluctuated significantly over the past few years. While cryptocurrencies lack many of the advantages of gold backed currencies, such as stability and trust, they offer several unique benefits. Cryptocurrencies offer a high degree of anonymity in transactions, as they do not require personal identifying information to be shared. They also offer greater flexibility in terms of being able to move funds across international borders without the restrictions typically imposed by governments and banks. However, because cryptocurrencies lack regulation and centralization, they are more prone to security risks, including hacking and other forms of fraud. Additionally, their fluctuating value can pose significant risks for investors who may see their investments devalued over time. The next topic we'll discuss is the difference between money and currency and its constant misconception. As I just said, money and currency are two different things. In better words, different currencies, such as the dollar, are backed by gold, whereas money is backed by people's belief in its value. In better words, gold is money because people believe it to have value depending on its properties. In better words, money is the language of value. A simple example can be that if I discover a certain type of soil and simply make others believe it has value, it turns into money. That's why many people today don't understand certain meme coins. A prominent example being Shiba coin, which had people saying it's a scam and it's really not backed by any real means. That's why they don't understand that if the populace believes in something to have a certain value, that something turns into money. Bitcoin is exactly like that, meaning Bitcoin is money because people believe it holds value. This is a misconception so widespread that you will see nearly everyone calling it a currency, even though it's not. So, what we can conclude is that money doesn't have a bankroll, but currencies do. Money instead has certain properties that make people believe in its value. That is evident when we look at the history of money. Historically, money had value because it represented a certain amount of precious metals, such as gold or silver. Having a finite amount of these precious metals meant that they could not simply be printed at will, ensuring that money retained its value. This system of currency backed by gold is known as the gold standard. Countries linked their currency to the value of their gold reserves. Governments, central banks, and treasuries were responsible for maintaining reserves of gold, and as a result, the supply of money was limited by the supply of gold. The gold standard worked because it provided a stable foundation for the currency values and created an equivalent relationship between currency and gold. In this way, money was a physical representation of a set amount of gold, and gold could be exchanged in return for that money. Gold backed currency also had several advantages, such as stability and credibility. It provided a fixed, reliable system that could not be manipulated or inflated by governments and central banks. This created a sense of trust and confidence in currency values. However, the gold standard also had its several limitations. One major criticism was that it restricted the flexibility of governments to inject funds into the economy during periods of economic crisis. Additionally, the supply of gold reserves was limited, meaning that the money supply was also limited. This could have negative consequences for economic growth and development. The gold standard was gradually dismantled after World War II. Today, most countries in the world adopt a fiat monetary system that uses government issued currency backed by confidence in the issuing government, rather than gold or other precious metals. This system allows for more flexibility in response to various economic conditions and needs. In summary, the gold standard was a system of currency that was linked to gold reserves in order to create a stable and reliable currency system. One of the chief characteristics of Bitcoin is its limited supply. Satoshi Nakamoto designed the cryptocurrency with a cap on its supply limit. This increases its scarcity over time, which tends to increase supply and demand. New bitcoins are added to the Bitcoin supply every 10 minutes, which is the average time it takes to create a new block of Bitcoin. By design, the number of bitcoins minted per block is reduced by 50% every 210,000 blocks, or approximately every 4 years. The total number of bitcoins issued is not expected to reach 21 million, and that's because the Bitcoin network uses bit shift operators or arithmetic operators that round some decimals point down to the closest smallest integer. This rounding down may occur when the block reward for producing a Bitcoin block is divided in half, and the amount for the new reward is calculated. That reward can be expressed in satoshis, with one satoshi equaling 1.000000 bitcoins. That's 7 zeros. Because a satoshi is the smallest unit of measurements in the Bitcoin network, it cannot be split in half. The Bitcoin blockchain, when tasked with splitting a satoshi in half to calculate a new reward amount, is programmed using bit shift operators to round down the nearest whole integer. This systematic rounding down of Bitcoin block rewards in fractions of satoshis is why the total number of bitcoins issued is likely to fall slightly short of 21 million, with the number of new bitcoins issued per block decreasing by half approximately every 4 years. The final bitcoin, realistically the final satoshi, is not expected to be generated until the year 2114. The number of new bitcoins minted per block was 50, when Bitcoin was first established, and has since decreased to 6.25 as of May 2020. The next halving is supposed to be taking it to 3.125 and is expected to happen sometime in 2024. Bitcoin has many bugs, and although explaining every one of them takes a lot of time and it's kind of unnecessary, for both making an example and providing an educational purpose, I want to introduce you to the concept of difficulty adjustment and readjustment. The difficulty of a block means the amount of time it takes for that block to be mined. And for some blocks, it takes less than 10 minutes, and for some others, it takes more. Sometimes a block can be mined in as little as 3 minutes, while other times a block takes up to 15 minutes. So, what exactly determines the speed of mining? The hardware power of the users does. And although it ultimately is random through multiple equations, the miner of the said block gets determined. One can increase their odds of becoming a block's miner by simply injecting more hardware power for a bigger chance at it. Now, here's where it gets more interesting as difficulty readjustment comes into play. You see, every 2016 blocks, the system automatically adjusts the difficulty of the next 2016 blocks based on the average time a block got mined in the past 2016 blocks, or in terms of our time, 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, an automatic difficulty readjustment happens toward making the average mining time 10 minutes. If the average time is more than 10 minutes, the difficulty lowers so the blocks get mined in less time. While if the average time is less than 10 minutes, the difficulty goes higher to make the get mined harder, thus making the average time rise toward the 10-minute mark. Well, now a noteworthy bug that Bitcoin has is that after the 2 week readjustment mark, the first block of the blockchain doesn't get counted toward the 2016 blocks of the next 2 weeks, meaning that even if theoretically said block takes years to mine, that doesn't count toward the average in the difficulty adjustment after the 2 week mark. While this hasn't really caused a problem for the whole process, it's still theoretically a bug that is a point of criticism toward Bitcoin. And I understand there's a question that what determines the finishing point of one block and starting point of the next block? And to this I answer, and for that we have to know what mining is and what it does. The blocks don't end, their prices do. Blocks will continue even until the next million years. And what does make a block end? The block being empty does. The blocks back in 2009 and 2010 were empty if you go back and take a look. The process of block generation begins with a network of nodes that work together to create new blocks. These nodes are typically computers that are connected to the blockchain network and are responsible for verifying and confirming transactions. When a new transaction occurs, it is broadcast to the network of nodes, which then work to ensure that the transaction is valid and follows the rules of the blockchain. Once a transaction has been verified, it is added to a pool of unconfirmed transactions. Miners, who are specialized nodes on the network, then take these unconfirmed transactions and add them to a block. The process of adding a transaction to a block involves solving a complex mathematical problem known as proof of work, which requires solving a cryptographic puzzle that involves a large amount of computational power. Once a miner solves the puzzle, they create a new block that contains the confirmed transactions and the solutions to the puzzle. The miner then broadcasts the block to the network where it is verified and added to the blockchain. The end of one blockchain and the start of another is determined by a predefined set of rules that govern the creation of new blocks. Just like 10-minute rule and the difficulty readjustment we talked about earlier, if you remember. In blockchain technology, a block ends when it reaches its maximum capacity, which is determined by the block size limit. The maximum size of a block depends on the specific blockchain protocol, but it is typically measured in megabytes or bytes, and is usually 1 to 2 megabytes. Each new block that is generated contains a unique hash that is linked to the previous block's hash, and it creates a chain of blocks that cannot be altered without disrupting the entire sequence. This immutability is one of the key features of the blockchain and ensures that once a block has been added to the chain, it cannot be modified